purposes that VCAR has set for our Year 11 and Year 12 English students. I'm Shalane from TSE Tuition. Let's get into it. For the crafting or creating texts area of study, there are 4 purposes that VCAR has allowed our students to try and achieve. Now, the thing about these purposes is that our students need to hit at least one of them. So it could be 1, it could be 2, 3 or 4. I don't recommend 3 or 4. I feel like that's a lot. I think 1 or 2 is great. Before we go on, I want to apologize for this stuffy nose situation. I have a cold. It can't be helped. Please excuse me. So what are the 4 purposes? They are to argue, to reflect, to express, and to explain. So we'll go through them one by one. Now, to argue, I think most students are pretty familiar with this one. You have to have a perspective or a stance, and you're trying to persuade your audience or your reader of your stance, right? You're trying to get them to agree to what it is that you're pushing forth. Now, because this is a persuasive thing, you are arguing something, it is important to have some kind of contention in it, right? Now, in a contention, just like in your argument analysis, there should be 2 parts. There should be a problem and there should be a solution. If you just have a problem without a solution, you end up doing a rant, and ranting is not the same as arguing. So make sure you have both. You have a problem and a solution that you're pushing forth and that you're trying to get your audience to agree with you, right? To side with you on that. The other 3 purposes I think students will have more of a hard time with because we don't normally get our students to write in these ways. So let's talk about them in a little bit more detail. Now, to reflect, what we're really doing is we're comparing past, present, and or future kind of situations or scenarios. And what we're doing is we're revealing truths, hopefully personal, and growth, right, through that comparison. So when we're reflecting, we're really talking about, I used to be like this and now I'm like this. I am like this now, but I don't know what I'm going to be in the future, or I hope I will be this in the future. So we're really talking about time periods and sort of perspectives and truths and growths that may have happened throughout those time periods. When we're reflecting, we're looking back, right? We're looking back at the past, we're looking back at who we used to be, we're looking back at what we used to think, right? How we used to see the world, and then maybe comparing that to now. Now I see things this way, now I have this kind of perspective, now I have grown in these kinds of ways. Or we're talking about the future. In the future, I hope I will be like this. I don't know, but I may be, it's going to be like this. So we're really doing a comparison when we're reflecting. The 3rd purpose is to express. Now, when we're expressing, it can be difficult, right, to nail down what that means exactly. If we look at the dictionary definition of to express, it means to convey emotion or to convey a perspective. When we think about that in a writing format, I think what we're really doing when we're expressing is we are trying to get your reader or your listener, whatever format you're doing, to step inside your shoes and to feel what you feel and to see things through your perspective. So we're trying to express your way of seeing the world or your way of feeling about something. So depending on what framework you're doing, so let's say you're doing protest, right? You're trying to express, or you're trying to sort of convey, how do you feel about this, or what do you think about this? So let's say you're doing protest, and I don't know, specifically, right, more importantly, you're talking about maybe your reluctance about joining something, right, about joining a protest. So you're trying to convey those mixed emotions of like, oh, I feel like it is important, but I don't feel like I can personally do anything, like I'm just one person, like honestly, what kind of difference can I make by joining this one piddly protest, right, in Melbourne? I don't know. So talking through that process and conveying how you feel, how you see your viewpoint, your perspective on whatever it is that you're talking about, and trying to get your reader or your listener to really feel that, right, to sort of be in your shoes for a bit. Now, to argue and to express are different things. To argue is to make someone agree with you, right, to bring them on board with whatever stance or argument that you're making. Whereas to express is really to get them to understand, right, where you're coming from. And that brings us to the last purpose, which is to explain. Now, when we're explaining, what we're really doing is we're making ideas more clear, or we're describing things in detail, or we're revealing truths about something. So explaining, I think, can also be framed as informing. I think informing, there's a more of like a teaching aspect to it, whereas explaining is a little bit more neutral. We're making things more clear, right? Maybe when, let's say your framework is play, when we're explaining, we're really explaining, sort of describing how does play work, right? Why does play work? What does play do, right? So explaining the functions of play, explaining why it's important, maybe explaining the positives and the negatives of it. So explaining why play can bring communities together, why play can maybe heal traumas in communities, or it could be the other way around, right? That play is very exclusionary, right? That play is very isolating for some who are not invited into the play, or they're not allowed in the play, right? That it's very exclusionary and it's not a particularly healthy or productive thing in a community. So you're explaining, you're describing in detail, right, how it works, the consequences, etc., etc. Now, Vika has said that you can do one or more, and certainly I think most students should aim for 2 purposes. I think 1 is a little bit simplistic. It sort of limits what you can do in your piece, and I think 2 is a sweet spot, right? Anything more than 2, I think 3 or 4, like you could, but maybe not in a SAC situation, and maybe not in an exam situation, like the very pressurized writing conditions, and you have a time limit, right, for writing these things. So I would suggest 1 or 2 purposes that you set for yourself and that you try and achieve in your pieces. Now, is there a combination that works best? I would say that depends on the student, and it depends on sort of what you're comfortable with, right? Some students are more comfortable explaining and expressing. Some students are more comfortable arguing. So it depends on who you are. It depends on what you're comfortable with. It also depends on your perspective, on your framework. So explore all of that and make sure that the purposes that you're trying to achieve sort of work well for you, strategically speaking. So I hope that was helpful. As always, like and subscribe to all of our social media channels so that you don't miss out on the content that we post. We have a newsletter for tutors and parents who are looking for advice on how to support their teens doing English. So if that's you, make sure you sign up to our mailing list. Our shop has 3 vocabulary packs aimed at sort of junior, middle and senior high school students. They're full of words. I think each pack has at least 200 words that we feel that students really need to know in moving through the year. So if you feel like vocabulary is an issue for you, check out the packages on our shop. And if you're looking for one-to-one English tutoring, please contact us and let's have a chat about how we can support you. Thanks for watching.